Right now we are here, Washington, D.C., with two incredible artists who are making noise all around the country. From Oakland, California, tell everybody your name.
Favianna Rodgriguez.
And from Houston, Texas.
I live in Washington, D.C. now, but yeah, Cesar Maxit.
I wanted to ask you both, the regions that you come from, is there an art history that is influenced your art, you know, like a tradition that it comes out of? Start with you, Favi.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when I was growing up and understanding the work of Emory Douglas, who was the Minister of Culture of the Black Panther Party and who did a lot of the front covers of the Panther newspaper that said, you know, off the pig, or it would talk about black-brown solidarity, or the U.S. out of Central America, South America. Huge influence on me. Also, a lot of the Chicano artists that were coming out of California, L.A., and the Bay Area, like Malaquias Montoya, Esther Hernandez, Yolanda Lopez. One of the first posters that really, just really made me understand the power of the poster was a big piece that had an indigenous man wrinkling up immigration papers, and it said, "Who's the illegal alien pilgrim?" And I saw that when I was 14 years old, and I instantly was like, wow, this woman is challenging, you know, the white kind of power establishment. And since then, you know, that image, I remember seeing it and like putting it away because I thought it was a little bit too confrontational. But all that history in the Bay Area especially, and in California, were really key to my development of art. So I'm a first generation born here in the United States. My parents immigrated from Peru. They were undocumented for many years, and so for them, education, being a scientist or an engineer or a doctor, was what they wanted for their kids. And so even though I was an artist from a very young age, I was never a professional. I mean, I never was professionally trained, and the way I've learned art has all been self-taught or by interacting with other artists. But growing up in Oakland, seeing violence and seeing what was happening to my family and to brown people, black folks in California made me really angry. And so art was a way for me to deal with that and to deal with the messages that I was getting. And so this first piece around artists must fight for justice and peace is really kind of symbolic. This is a poster that I did. I'm going to talk really fast, by the way, okay? This is a poster that I did in 2001, right after Bush announced the war. And really I did it to kind of claim that women of color were going to be standing up against the war, but also to immediately put out an anti-war message that had as a central figure a woman of color named Mina. And Mina was the leader of RAWA, which was the Revolutionary Afghanistan Women's Association, murdered also by her government. But just as a symbol that war, women and children are the ones who die in war. Along the same time, 2001, when we saw an increase in military recruitment at our schools, especially schools who were young men of color. And so really, you know, drilling home the message that when you are in war, not only do you have a war abroad, you have a domestic war on young men of color, where they either go to prison or they have to go into the military. This piece, for me, is really a symbol of fighting colonization. How it is that as a young woman of color, all you see on the media is images of white women, and that white women represent beauty, and how as little girls, as women of color, I went through a phase when, you know, I was asked myself, why am I not white? Why don't I speak English right? Why don't I have, like, you know, blonde hair? And so what it meant to, like, let go and fight that whiteness, and then also the whiteness that gets imposed by Catholicism, which many of us, our families bring from Latin America, you know, and like the whole practice of having a quinceañera when you're supposed to dress in all white and, like, you know, celebrate your virginity, were all things that I began to reject, and really reject all the aspect of whiteness and the messages around wanting to be European and lighter, and instead embrace the fact that I was a woman of color and all those, you know, aspects of darkness and what they meant, and really kind of having a way to become empowered and to be wrong.
I see that you've done a lot of posters. Was there an art scene or an art history, a legacy out of Texas or anything like that that's influenced you, or did you pick up your style from other places?
I didn't. I mean, in Texas, I guess what I did start seeing is the graffiti, is like you know, spray paint, aerosol art, and I thought that was so powerful, and so I came at it from an activist angle. You know, I was organizing, and I started doing nonviolent direct action trainings for the Ruckus Society, and so my art was really just an extension of my activism, and I just realized that my art can be as powerful as organizing a big protest, and so my influence really was like a lot of like the street artists that I saw, and I was just like, it was part of it was like my frustration sometimes that a lot of times they would just write their name, and so I was like, man, you're like on the street, and it's like, and I know from being in other countries that street art has a strong tradition of political engagement and social advocacy, and it's such a democratized sort of like form of communication.
Yours is coming out of graffiti, I'm sorry.
It's coming out of graffiti, it's coming out of hip hop, and yeah, that's where I'm drawing from. And so, you know, my influences would be some of like the big street artists that you see, you know, today, including like Banksy and Swoon, and local artists as well. Decoy, Neocon.
Oh, okay. How about you? Did graffiti have a role in any of the stuff that you do?
Well, of course. I mean, I was you know, I was hanging out with a graffiti writer for 7 years, and I was hanging out with one of the kings of San Francisco.
Who was that?
Which is Estria.
Oh, okay.
And you know, one of the best painters in the Bay Area, and so I was definitely introduced to, you know, some of the kings in the entire country, and really understanding what role they played, you know, how they were doing innovative stuff on rooftops, and, you know, I mean, just hanging around Estria for so many years and being a poster artist, a lot of my color palettes are the same colors that the cans are available in, just because those were the color palettes. You know, he would do a production and I would do a poster, and we would collaborate a lot. And so graffiti, and we also had a graffiti mural art program that we ran for about 5 years called Visual Element, where we were traveling, you know, to places like Mexico City. We went to Peru to do some murals. So the main thing was like how to get you know, work out into the public sphere, whether that was through walls or through posters. That's been a huge influence.
And I mean, I would add that, like, I think, you know, one of the questions tonight was about maybe missing something out of art school, and I think was what I missed from art school, not going to art school, is like some of like sort of the legacies and knowing my history of like artists and sort of propagandists. But I feel like my influence comes, out of hip hop. It's like, I think it's fair to say that like MCs have influenced my visual art, you know, and I think there's like strong connections between the arts, and I think that's fair to say. And so, like, you know, if I was gonna name, I would, you know, certainly like Malachias Montoya and some of these artists, but I'd also say like, you know, MCs like Dead Prez and Public Enemy, and you know, just like.